few thoughts that you'd like to prompt, please.
So just a few reflections on that, which certainly is a whole range of issues come down on being put on the table there. And just quickly, I want to reflect that I have worked both in DFID around engaging with Japan and on the Japanese side around engaging with the UK. So I've sort of seen this from the inside, from both sides. And one quick point I'd like you to reflect on is that I cannot imagine a similar seminar as this taking place in Tokyo of DFID, sitting down a whole range of DFID people talking about DFID's position within a crowded and shifting marketplace. That is simply not the way DFID sees the world. And as Penny's just said, that DFID puts a lot of effort into that high-level communication. And part of the challenge of this question around where Japan fits in is obviously sitting here in London, the overview of the donor world is dominated by a Western mindset, which is dominated by very strong communications and a very strong voice. So one of the key issues I see is voice, and the Japanese voice and the methods of communication. And that also comes out of domestically within Japan. The voice in Japan of Japanese aid is not particularly strong either, and there are lots of historical reasons around that. So I certainly think there's a reflection around relative voice of different aid perspectives, different donor perspectives globally, that essentially this throws up. But there's also the view that, for example, the DAC is dominated by a particular perspective, and Japan does offer some different perspectives, but once again, its voice is not necessarily heard so much. Another comment is around leadership. When I was working on both sides, for me and the people I was working with, there was always this question around, wow, so Japan has all this experience, and Japan, must have something interesting to say. And essentially, Professor Tsunekawa here has offered some strong views on that. But there's always this sort of expectation of more leadership. So I think there's a question, an ongoing question for me in the work I've done around Japanese leadership, which links in with the voice, but a desire for Japan to step up into more leadership. But then again, to be aware that that is I'm British, that's a sort of Western perspective on it, and perhaps to be open to leadership from a Japanese way actually is perhaps not leadership as we would necessarily like to see it. And so then that brings me to sort of my final thoughts offered to you, which is around, so who evaluates? Who evaluates aid? Who has the power in deciding the aid? Obviously the peer review process is set up and the DAC, but there's the relative voice and power and leadership within that process. And then, so who evaluates? And obviously Professor Tsunekawa here has said, well, hold on a minute, how about the recipients? The recipients at the bottom. So there is this really interesting question around who is evaluating aid and what is it for? Who and what? Is it a win-win or is it a give? I think that's some of the questions that have come up for me around this discussion today. So now over to you.